So, yes, I do spend a lot of time talking about data. We talked about the light and the fluffy side and the kind of the emotional bits, and now we're going to go to the the ones and noughts, which, depending on your perspective, is just as interesting and it's just as important, but it's part and parcel of what we need to do. So, why am I here? Why should you listen to me? This is the bit where I kind of do the I'm Troy McClure and tell you about the history of what I've done. And as Carl said before, I got into digital. I used to work in print. I used to work for Motorcycle News and came back from working with other companies to then run their digital side, and eventually at that point in time ran the biggest motorcycle website in the world in the early 2000s. Got to know lots of numbers, got to know lots of motorcycle riders, but it wasn't really a digital world. I was called Tim.com because I was the one bloke who did internet. So I moved on and I went to work for Maximizer, testing company, and I was there from the very start. So I helped build the UK setup and learned a lot about what to do in testing, a lot about what not to do in testing, and really kind of cut my teeth in the world of sort of CRO and A/B testing. So although I'd been doing split testing offline and doing sort of direct mail splits, was able to now put numbers to stuff that we're previously not been doing that well. And in the last few years, I've been working with SiteSpect, which is another vendor, and they're much more in the server side, so a lot of big data stuff, a lot of offline data being merged with online data, which gives you a whole new set of stuff to play with. But most of the time, I run my own business, which is TRS Digital Consultancy, and as Carl said, I will mostly be found posting bad dad jokes on Twitter as PG Die. But if all that's boring to you, then at least some incentive is if you want to get the longer version of the presentation, which has got some more detail on some of the stuff I'm going to talk about, because I am time limited, you can scan that code and get free audio books, audio summary books of CRO stuff and for psychology and things related to that. But also, if you opt in, GDPR, I will get your email and I can send you a link to the longer version of the presentation if you're interested. So, on to the main subject. What are we talking about? So, talking to Pep about what we could do for the conference, I can do a lot of geeky stuff on the CRO and the hardcore numbers, but I fix a lot of the fundamentals. And really what I want to try and do today is help you leap forward with analytics, taking from the Audi guys, Vorsprung durch Analytik. I want you to think through the things that may influence your results and look at where the bottlenecks are for where people fall out of your site, where you are failing to make money, where you could do better. And I need you to think about your data, because I'm going to give you some examples today for what I've done and how I've solved problems for my clients, but I can't solve for everybody. It's a half-an-hour window and I don't know what your problems are. But this will hopefully give you ideas about what you can investigate for your areas, for your clients, for your customers, for your users. And with the examples and ideas I'm going to show you today that I've done for solutions that have worked in the past for me, I hopefully inspire you to do the same sort of thinking through for your products and realize your potential. Because there is so much potential out there in your analytics which is just not being used. And if some of the stuff I've tried is a bit crazy and you haven't really thought about it yourself, I'd love to hear next year you guys coming back saying, I took from that and I came up with my own mad scientist invention on how to abuse Google Analytics to use it for my own purposes. So, let's start with classic Google Analytics, and this is why we swapped machines, because obviously this is going to be quite small, so we can zoom in on stuff. And that's lovely. This is a typical kind of setup for people with their analytics. It's like, oh, there we go, we're tracking events. Google Analytics, tick. Yeah, but how useful is this for actual reporting? Promotion, show article. Great. Like, which article? How much better than last month? In this big scheme of things, how much more information are we collecting? This is just something the developers set up. We can collect it, so we collected it. But when it comes to reporting on it to do something about those numbers, not much use. Yeah, great, lovely. IP location, we found one. Yay, let's record that. How are we doing on IP locations this month? Doesn't matter. Then we drill down. Okay, well, let's see what they looked up. And this is my pet peeve. This makes Data Tim upset. But I do not want to see not set. But pretty much every analytics account I get handed, hey, we track events. Good on you. What's your best event? Oh, well, this month we had 500,000 not sets. You've got 10 million hits on your account, on a free account. That's quite a hard limit if you start using it properly. 3.5 million hits. No idea what's going on. It's scores on the doors, but... So, we've got Google Analytics. Great tool, for free, often abused and not used properly. We've also got Tag Manager. BFFs. These two things together, they're great. So when I'm talking today, I'm going to be mostly talking about Tag Manager. Not because you can't do this the hard-coded way, if people are stuck without a Tag Manager, but doing it with Tag Manager makes all this so much easier. Everything I'm going to talk about today is much easier to do. It's possible the other way, but this would be my #1 recommendation. If you're not using GTM, get on it. And those guys who don't know GTM, show of hands, who's got Tag Manager, either Google Tag Manager or Telium on there? So we've got a good percentage. Poor souls with their hands down. I feel sorry for you, but fair enough. Quick overview is you can basically add what you want as a script container on the site, and you can put what you want in there to track. So it's got the Google stuff built in, but you can add custom scripts, event tracking, whole bunch of things to the site. Dimensions, metrics, detail about what people are doing. We looked earlier on about what detail is being collected. If you don't think it through, what I'm going to try and encourage you to do is think through what detail you need. You may see my Tag Manager, my screenshots look a little bit different. That's because I'm using a plugin called DaVinci, Stefan de Hamel's little toy. It works with Google Analytics, Tag Manager. It's really helpful for doing stuff. And this is the paid version, so you want to help sponsor, but there is a free version which is just as functional. So in Tag Manager, we've got a long list of variables. Here's a typical list of user-defined variables, the ones I've added in for a client. And we collect that data in Tag Manager. So Tag Manager has got the information. And then we send those values to Google Analytics. So we control what we read on the site, and we control when we send it, which is hugely useful. So let's have a look at some of these as an example. This is one of my clients. Zooming in this bit, we've got our used bike stock variables. These are the things that I've got holes in Tag Manager to collect information to. We can capture that data from the page, right-click, inspect element, scrape from the DOM. But that's easy to break and hard to set up. So ideally, you get that pushed to a data layer. Because this information has to be sent from the back end, otherwise there's nothing to put in the holes to render in HTML. So somebody somewhere can also tag that in and put that as a data layer. And here we've got exactly the same information, but we've got a bit more to work with, and it's a reliable format we can name as a data layer variable. We can pick that up. Now in this case, I'm using bikes as an example. But another client, we've got slightly higher priced vehicle. But you'll notice I'm collecting different things, because for this customer, I'm solving different problems. So yeah, we've got the same stock ID and all the car stuff, but I'm also collecting, I don't know if that's any clearer, it's quite big, I'm going to do that. I'm collecting the distance, days in stock, DIS. So this has been in stock for 340 days. I've also got an image count. I know how many images are loaded. I know the date it was added, 2018 it was added. LMD, last modified date for this client. That's a £400,000 car they've had in stock for nearly a year. It hasn't moved, and they haven't updated it. This was pulled on Monday. They last updated this in December. Now, the person who pays me to do this is this guy's boss, because he wants to know why we're sitting on £500,000 worth of green car. Why haven't we reduced the car? Why haven't we checked the prices? Why haven't we checked where we're advertising it? That's an expensive asset. That's a net risk sat on their forecourt. They've got to polish it. They've got to service it. So for them, I'm collecting different stuff. For these guys, wedding rings, it's typical e-commerce payload. But I also want to know what their finance terms were when the page loads. And in the longer presentation, I explain a bit more about how I'm capturing that and why that's important. But it doesn't have to be e-commerce or vehicles. In this case, I'm using the same concept to help out a good friend of mine who is, shall we say, data illiterate. She's not somebody who's going to log into Google Analytics at all. So although I'm doing e-commerce tracking, I'm using Google Analytics for that, the stuff I'm capturing actually just gets attached to the email. So when somebody fills in a contact form, they also get a list, the e-commerce impressions list, sent alongside saying, here are the 10 models that they looked at before they called you. because for her job is finding the right model to match the person who wants that event. So if they know they've been looking at female fitness models, before she makes her outbound, she knows she's got in her mind who's free as a female fitness model. So she's come up with a solution for the customer before she makes an outbound. So it's not what Google Analytics was intended for, but it's something, a slot you've got where you can just go, well, they're not using it, I'll use that. So let's go back to my bike example. We've got our variables, we've got our slots to put data into. That's our GTM data layer part. And then we've got the page, which loads, and these are the values that are loaded on that page, which are our used stock values for that particular bike on that particular page. Zoom in on that. So we've now got variables and values, which we can now send to Google Analytics. So when an event happens, a thing happens, send what thing? Now the sending part, this is an event tag. We've got a hard-coded bit, inquiry click, and then I've got a variable to look up. And the bike stock type is pulled from the data layer, and it's coming up used. And we can see that the inquiry click is the hard-coded part in blue, and then the used part depends on what the data layer is saying. So if I was on a new page, that would be inquiry click new. One tag, two values. We want to go better than that. We don't have to have hard-coded bits. We can have lookup values. So now our variables can be fed by other variables. So in this case, our lookup type goes to bike stock type. Is it new or used? And if the bike stock type is new, it will use the new bikes payload. And if the bike stock type is used, it will use the used bikes payload. One tag, dependent lookups. This means that when we're looking at new bikes, we can look at the year model and which one it's got and images, etc. But on the new one, we get far more information because we've got mileage, date added, stock ID, so we know who we bought it from and when. And we can do that for all of these ones. We can also do this for custom dimensions. In this example, I'm collecting the client ID, so I can collect the cookie ID and link data. I'm also collecting the dealer name and the dealer ID because it's not one dealership, it's actually the whole of a network. So whilst I'm reporting across the whole network on a roll-up account, I also need my per dealer reports. So I collect custom dimensions for those ones. And you can also do it without the data layer. In this case, we're using CMOS method to collect the client ID and sending a JavaScript task. So that's all very useful, glue it together stuff. But again, the longer version goes into more details about how you do that. The result is, and this is what we're doing it for, in these bits, we can now see stock view new versus stock view used, which is much more useful than clicked something not set. And we can see the comparative difference between stock view for new stuff is way higher. We've got, take an example, test ride form complete. So we can look at the specific thing that happened. And when we look at that, we can see which dealer had the form completion, and we can see which bikes, which models. Why is that useful? It's nice to know. Within this unit interface, it's not that great. Well, let's show you why. In that label, I've got the model year. And because I've got year and a kind of common delimiter, I can just do matches year number. That's my 2016. That's a custom segment, but I can use that for custom audience, custom targeting. Why is that useful? Well, let's put it in GA reports. Year segment 1, year segment 2. We can now do a comparison about how models from 2017 versus 2016 versus 2015. And that's that report. And we can then see comparatively how many people have got whatever event the stock view for each year. So how popular is my old stock versus my new stock? How much money am I spending to promote my old stock versus my new stock? What's the comparative totals? Another example, taking another slice of that long string of data that's just useful for me, but when we slice it up, starts being useful to answer the customers. What's the price range? How well do my £30,000 Audis do versus my £40,000 Audis? Why do I care? Well, these guys here, Auto Trader and Parker's, they're not charities. They charge money. Advertising used stock costs money. Not all stock works the same on each different things. We've got different audiences, different portals, different prices. So I maybe don't want to send my £50,000 cars to Parker's because they don't do as well as they do on premiercars.com. But this allows us to save money, £50,000, £60,000 a month, which all goes into other stuff we could be doing, paying me. So this is probably quite a kind of set up properly a common use case. We know about success events. If a good thing happens, track that good thing. And if you aren't, please do start. But I'm saying, don't just track it, track the type of thing, not just click or form complete. Which form? Where? What product? Because you can then use that information to slice later on. What details? So here we've got inquiry click used at the category level, and then we look at that next to the label, we can see how many people clicked to inquire for which bikes. We can rank our bikes in terms of popularity. So we can use that in custom segments and filters. I can do my dealer report by dealer ID. We can use that for remarketing, subject to opt-in. So anybody who's been looking at a Yamaha bike can be followed around by a Yamaha model. Try and get the context, try and get the matching. We could do it in event goals, and I'll talk about that briefly in a minute. But for me, this is where it comes in, is all these little pieces, these little ways to divide the data up that I've now collected I can actually do, can be done for offline analysis. So I can start to say, what's my most popular year? Are we within the upper or lower bounds for conversion for a 2017 model that's blue at £30,000? Useful to one customer, but slice it down the way you want to. Because, as I sort of said earlier on, days in stock for this sort of stuff is days of cost. It's risk. It's money out on finance. It's money spent polishing the things on the forecourt. It's insurance. It's dead metal. How long should we keep this for? When should we flip it? Is how car dealerships and bike dealerships make money. So now I'm using their Google Analytics to provide a report that says, this shit needs to get sold quick, or we need to get rid of it quick. But they've not been able to answer that before, and they've not been able to focus their advertising on shifting the stuff that's costing them the most money, or stop advertising on stuff that's dead metal. We can also get fancy, and we can tie it together with custom CRM databases, and we'll look at where we do our leaflet drops and where we've got our bus adverts. And we can visualize how well our click-through rate or our inquiry ad rate is working, blotted by the areas where we've got dealerships, because it is highly localized. And if you're being fancy and you're using Power BI, you can tie into ArcGIS data. And that's basically kind of socio-demographic stuff, but if you have a quick scan down there, and again, we'll try and do the zoom one, it's probably easier. We can see like economically inactive, average age, long-term employed, car ownership figures. The jewelry guys, I've got amount of average money spent on jewelry per postcode in the UK. There's lots of good data on the internet. But I can't tie that together with my Google stuff unless I know which car, which jewelry, which model. Now, this obviously is not something you do within Google Analytics, but if you've collected it in Google Analytics and you can do your GA reports that they're useful, that also means the export data is 10x more useful. So you've got bigger data sets, more powerful statistical analysis, you can do more with it, you can answer more questions, because that's what we're trying to do, answer questions to help the business. So we do a more complicated data model. It's not quite your VLOOKUP Excel, but effectively, that's what you're trying to do. If you're trying to tie together the relationships between all those little pieces of data we stuffed into the label, we're not using it to have the world's longest label in Google interface. We're having it to have each of those pieces be something we can filter by, or divide by, or match against. Now, if you want to get really fancy, you've got hit level, and you can use a measurement protocol to fire to tools, your own cloud, or in this case, Citylana does one where you can pay them. They've already done the maths for it. And it'll dump all that data at hit level, millisecond timed. This is the exact order every single one of those things was hit in the journey for this client ID on the site. Huge amounts of data. Start doing stuff Russ was talking about yesterday in terms of modeling. What is the order of hits in terms of what they were clicked, what they looked in, which order has got higher propensity to buy or not buy, and therefore what should we do in terms of advertising to them. But that only works if what you're collecting is useful data. If that was not set, not set, not set, not set, that's a lot of server cycles, a lot of money for useless data. So collect good data in the first place. All right. Yeah, so this guy, one day, client ID, 5 different pages, and we can see they're looking at an A6 saloon, A4 Avant, A4 saloon, A1 Sportback. That's 4 very different cars. But actually, if you look it up, an old A6 is about the same price as a top spec A1. Somebody's got about £30,000 to spend, and they're trying to weigh up between size and the number of toys they have in the cockpit. So their buying decision is probably led more by price than us advertising A6s, but they probably came in clicking on an A6 and ended up buying an A1. So we used to go fishing. We used to see which ones are good for getting people and which ones are good for selling to people, and sometimes those models don't stack. We talk about event goals briefly because it's something which is underused, and I'm low on time. You've got goals. Hopefully you've got goals set up, but they're not just thank you page URL targeted. Events can be used for goals as well, and I'd argue events should be used for goals in all cases, even if you've got the thank you page, because it can be so much more specific. But they're very good for macro conversions. So we saw my examples earlier on where I'm breaking down the labels in terms of new click, old click, etc. You can put the action in. You can use regex to say, yes, this goal has got this very specific. It's not just thank you, it's this specific thank you. So we can look at general inquiry, any, that's my all goals. But we can look at part X, click on new. So that's only part exchange clicks to click on the query form for new people. Form complete. Because if I've got form complete and form started, I can do a calculated metric. Talked about this before, and Charles and Craig will talk about it later on. But you can now, in Google Analytics, calculate metrics. So if you haven't got that maths, you can go original prices minus discount equals total price, or user conversion rate rather than visit conversion rate. In this case, number of people who clicked on the form, number of people who completed the form. I got my form completion rate as a custom measure I can look at and monitor over time. But people don't set that up. It's a beta thing. You've only got so many slots on a free account. But you can do as many as you want in Data Studio, as long as you set up your events to allow you to do that. If that only said not set, you can't go not set divided by not set. You could, but the number's nonsense. But here I've got test ride clicked, test ride completed, test ride completion rate. Custom reports in Data Studio, and that's the free stack, even if you aren't using the Power BI or the Azure cloud. What people don't do, and it's my final example to go through, fail events. What do you mean fail events? Well, we're following the theme here, but let's show by one example as to how this became an incredibly valuable thing to track. We've got a client, they sell e-liquid, error message. Please choose some options before you add to cart. Okay, poor signposting, but that's what happened. The stock levels, availability, they impact your conversion rate. If you're out of stock, people can't buy it. Your conversion rate will drop just because you don't have stock, not because of UX, not because of the test you're running, not because of the variant you're running. It's good to know. They've also got a PPC cost. We don't want to be advertising stuff we can't sell, but people do it all the time. And we also want to do some analysis to work out, well, who gets hit with this no, we don't want your money message the most often. So, if a bad thing happens, track the bad thing. And ideally, which type of failure? Out of stock. What was the cost of failure? £3.20. Where it failed? E-liquid, caramel liquid. And which use cases? This is completely out of stock. We can't sell it at all. And then we can track that. Here's the event stuff, and you can see here we've got validation fails exceeds available stock. They asked for 10, we only had 2. We've got variant fail, variant out of stock completely. We have none. And we can see whether it's add to cart at the product level, or add to cart at the category level, or add to cart at search results level. Because absence of evidence, not having data to say something's happening, does not mean evidence of absence. Just because you're not tracking errors doesn't mean they don't happen. And arguably it's worth more to track your errors and fix them than it is to track your success, because your business tracks its success in the bank. It doesn't track how much you could have had in the bank. Because we're looking here, and I've blurred it out on this, but we'll zoom in. In this case, we're tracking values. We've got £72 here. We're actually tracking the amount of money that was wasted by going, no, don't have any. And look at this, unique events, total events, 52,144. People seeing stock failure errors 2 to 3 times per product, per session. Let's have a look at their product selection. Yeah, okay. No, sorry, out of stock. Try that again. How well do you think this works on mobile? Surprisingly enough, nobody adds to cart on mobile because you can't hover. But this point is when you'd find out if I had it in stock or not. So this is why it's 2 or 3 times per person. This is where we're going, because you don't know they don't have stock until you try it. So you've got to try every possible combination, and in this case, 12 combinations. Potentially you could do this 16 times. They don't. On average, they do 3 times and then go, no, off. That's money wasted. So this is the product detail page, the PDP, classic ecom template. This is the point where the rubber meets the road. It's a person denied paid. Do all this, we don't want your money, jump through hoops. Please work harder. Is that UX, customer service? No, none of the above. But we weren't tracking this, we just knew that revenue wasn't high enough until I came in and started being sarcastic. So, we looked at the heat maps, because we do more than just quant else. We did spoke to people. We did the heat map stuff. And you can see, horribly painful. This is on the PDP, but it's the same process as you saw on the product list page. 3 drop down, mandatory 3 drop down selection. Minimum of 7 clicks to add to cart if it's in stock. And check available stock, unsurprisingly, seeing as we got stock issues, was nearly as often used as the add to cart button. So people got told no, and eventually went, well, what do you have? You can only get away with that with an addictive nicotine product. So let's look at the quantity distribution. Distribution of items per user, items purchased per user. Obviously, the biggest is 1 item per person. Second, fall off. But look at the distribution. We've got people who are buying 60 items here. Imagine doing that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 add to cart for 60 items on a purchase visit. That's a good hour and a half worth of time. Some users bought over 200 items. 200 items! Mostly trade people, but we didn't have a trade portal. Could you imagine that they must have been cursing if that was out of stock? Imagine trying to restock 200 times with that. Okay, so we can solve this. We've spotted the problem. We've got data now. We've collected it's this mix, it's this type of VG, PG, the thickness of the liquid, this nicotine strength, this flavour, and we can collate that data. Because we collected it, we can now analyse it. The client owns the factory. We have no excuse for being out of stock. We make the stuff. But he doesn't know what's most popular, what's selling out, what's hot, what's not. He doesn't know what he's running short on. He doesn't know what error rates are on particular things, what's in danger of running out, because his stock building is separate from his website. Well, we've got an early warning system that can tell us what people are looking for and failing and getting told off for, so he can change his priority. You can walk in Monday going, well, do more cherry. Why? We're nearly out. Busy weekend for cherry. And we can look at stuff like this and go, hold on a second, naught sales. This one, we've got loads of views, got loads of ads, not sales, product revenue 0. That's something big sign, we're out of stock. We're trying to sell it, people are trying to buy. That's huge chunks of angry, frustrated, foaming at the mouth people who can't buy. And we're tracking the event value. So I can show them a report saying, here's how much money you lost this week. You want to motivate a factory owner? You failed to print this money. These are people desperate to give you cash. Look at this report. That's the angry, shouty report. So he owns a factory, we can fix this. But we can also analyse deeper and go, which product lines can be rationalised? We've got a problem here because there's so much choice, because you can mix every liquid in every flavour, in every strength and every thickness. There's going to be something out of stock because we've got 1 billion different combinations. Not all of those billion get bought. In fact, there's an 80-20 rule in pretty much everything. We can give him those numbers. So what are the most commonly bought combinations of nicotine strength, and which flavours they bought in, and which ones are more suited to people who have just given up smoking, and which one high nicotine strength but maybe tobacco flavoured? Hello, Tom. And then there's ones where people who are maybe vaping for pleasure and they've got kind of very low nicotine, maybe a thicker, cloudier liquid, and they're more flavour fiends. But we're different customers, and we could stock depending on who we're advertising to and how we're advertising to, and we could control that and maybe look at the ones which make us the most profit and maybe do stuff that is loss leading. Have our little Archaea candles, and which ones are going to get people like Tom to buy first from us, and then the repeat customers who end up buying 60 or 70 bottles because they're stocking up for the month, because they're now not just, I'll give it a try and buy 1 bottle. They're like, I like these 5 flavours and I'll add 3 more to try. They quickly become very valuable repeat customers if we don't annoy the shit out of them on the first visit. So we did a lot more work than that, but like I said, there's a longer presentation which goes into kind of how that happens. But this is the redesigned version of that page. Thumb friendly, no drop downs. We've now paid attention to the mobile people. We've now got a much simpler screen. The mobile version works and everything's above fold, and mobile conversion went like that. Stock availability in a nice, easy to understand grid is shown on load. It's a key issue. We control it better, but we now say you can have those combinations. Add to cart cannot be clicked, and it's not green and click me now until you've made a valid selection. And when you make those selections, when you click the buttons to go strength and flavour, it then highlights and shows which ones, and the ones you can't collect, the ones we're out of stock on, are also greyed out in inactive. You literally can't pick the wrong product. So I had to mock this up, but that's what it looks like when you failed to pick something they've got in stock. So the design's changed. Great, we've got better UX, we're not annoying so many people, this is good, our CRO numbers are up. But this is the more important part, and this is where the money was made. The process was changed. I had to get this mocked up because I couldn't find non-stock items anymore, because we don't have non-stock items anymore. Because we own the factory and we've got enough lead time that unless China shut down and we can't get the raw materials, we're going to have stock. More importantly for managing the audience, the range changed. We no longer have everything possible combination. We've got a new users range. Dead simple, 2 choices. Do you want strong or less strong? We've got the gourmet range where you can pick, but it's a narrow range of flavours that tend to be bought by experienced people. And the results have changed. New and returning, both add more and both add more often. I'm ignoring that. So what did it do to the numbers? Because we've collected these now, and this is what we're aiming for. The reason for collecting all those little micro conversions and the details in the micro conversions is to make the big number at the end go up. So let's have a look at how the green arrows work. Can you guys see all that? Is that clear enough, or do you want me to zoom in? The short answer is we're pretty much up on everything across the board. What are we down on? Price. So our average price per unit has gone down. Why? Because we saved so much money, we're able to cut the price by 30% and still sell more. So we took market share off people because we were undercutting them for better product and we had lower costs. Win, 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 win across the board. Win, win, win. Yay! All from tracking the errors. That came from going, let me prove to you why it's worth fixing the errors. Oh yeah, out of stock just happened, it's not a problem. You are pissing money away, you are annoying people, it's a growth market and people come to you, they'll try you once, and if not, they will go next door on Google and try something else. But if you look after them and you deliver them, and your next day delivery is good and your product's good, they will go, it's a scary wild west world out there, but this guy's good, I'll stay with them. And the loyalty you get, especially for an addictive subject, is a little bit freaky, 200 plus products. So, you're only targeted on revenue. We only care about those green numbers at the end. We don't track micro conversions. We're not tracking errors. No. That's where the money's made, by fixing the holes where the money fell out. And if you're not tracking it with enough detail to know why or where, you're doing it wrong. So, I said I wanted to make you think through how this would impact your results. These are some examples, some problems I've solved for some clients and some different audiences. And I've shown you a bottleneck for one customer in one area and explained kind of how we can deal with that on the car side of things, the bike side of things, even to a degree how it works with modelling agencies. Your mileage will vary, but please think about how you can do this for your data, for your customers, because I guarantee you, if you start tracking this stuff, you will find similar situations about what you can investigate to fix these things. And with my examples and ideas, hopefully I've inspired you to go get some free stuff. There we go.